Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Stop Settlement Slush Funds Act of 2016, H.R. 5063, would remove an important civil enforcement tool available to agencies to hold corporations accountable for the general harm caused by unlawful conduct. H.R. 5063 would have potentially disastrous unintended consequences on the remediation of generalized harms in civil enforcement actions like the one that the chairman just noted at the very beginning of his speech. He talked about mortgage lending settlements that the Department of Justice had obtained after filing suit in court against Wall Street bankers who took billions of dollars in equity, home equity, from Americans throughout the country by way of predatory lending instruments, which blew up in their faces, caused the Wall Street meltdown. Wall Street got bailed out. The American people who had these mortgages that then were underwater lost their homes. And so the Department of Justice sued. And this is what this legislation seeks to get at. My friends on the other side of the aisle don't want the common people of this country to have the protection of government. They want a government that has hands off, let the private sector, let the free market work its will, no rules, whatever will be. And the bottom line is the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And this legislation would work to enforce that economic philosophy that is held so dear by my friends on the other side of the aisle. So these mortgage lending settlements, the DOJ sued the big banks. The big banks came to the table and decided to settle. And as a result of the settlement, there were directives that were agreed to by the Wall Street banks that they would give money to certified HUD counseling agencies. Those agencies have done a good job of helping people who had not lost their homes continue to stay in their homes, to get their mortgages refinanced, to get their situation in order, to give them the ability to hold on to the homes after they had lost their jobs and were unable to pay the mortgage for a number of months. These housing counseling agencies were able to be effective at keeping people in their homes. But my friends on the other side of the aisle, they don't want to have any part of that because it's costing their friends on Wall Street money. This same settlement that the chairman excoriated in his presentation just a minute ago, it gave money to state-based legal aid firms that were about helping people to avoid foreclosure, helping the very people that these banks stole from and hurt. And so this is what they want to stop, and they cloak it in they say that Congress should be the one to appropriate money, and that's true, but there's nothing about Article 1, the legislative branch, Congress, that is a part of a lawsuit that the Justice Department, a Article 2 body, would file in a federal court, an Article 3 court, that results in a settlement. There's no legislative implication in that whatsoever. There's no appropriations from the legislature. What it is a court-enforced transfer of the very wealth that was stolen from the people back to the people by way of these agencies, which my colleague refers to as activist third-party entities. Well, these are third-party entities that are acting on behalf of the very people who have been harmed. And what this legislation seeks to do is to take the ability of the Justice Department to obtain a settlement to help people who've been harmed. It takes that away and then would force the money to come into the hands of the legislative branch so that the legislative branch could then appropriate it. And we know that this legislative branch, controlled by the other side of the aisle, is not interested in helping people who lost their homes due to Wall Street fraud. And so that's what this legislation is all about. And it comes at a time when we've got people who are afflicted with the Zika virus. We can't even pass legislation in this chamber that would get at that public health emergency, which is right here on our doorstep, where it's in the House now. This is an emergency. We've got almost 2,000 babies born having been afflicted with the Zika virus. It's going to take $10 million for the remainder of their lives, average, to take care of them. That's $2 billion right there. And the president has come to us months ago requesting $1.9 billion, less than the $2 billion, to fund operations to get at this Zika virus, to prevent it from taking hold. And we can't even pass it in this Congress because we're too busy passing bills to help Wall Street. That's not what the American people want. That's not what the American people need. I ask my colleagues to vote against this legislation, and with that, I will reserve the